the eyes of the
focusing on the state of education in KZN. So we've had reports that already in February, KZN Education MEC Kwazi Mashangu was under pressure from unions to fill vacant posts in schools, return to full capacity, and then there was the issue recently of the racism that flared its ugly head again at Point Girls High. And then there's still no closure on the corruption with the PPA scandal from department officials there. So what is going on in KZN Education Department? We had the DA calling for the entire education department, KZN, to be placed under administration, and then the unions are calling to fill this. There are many educators who do not have teaching posts who are currently unemployed, while there's a huge ratio of learners to an educator. They said 9 teachers for in some schools for 650 pupils. So joining me to discuss this issue is Dr. Imraan Keeka, and he's the MPL provincial member of the KZN legislator, as well as he sits on the educational portfolio, as well as education spokesperson for the DA in KZN. And then I have on the line, I see it was changed, I've got now the SADTU KZN secretary, that's Nomarashiya Caluza, who's going to be joining me via telephone. And then earlier this morning, it was confirmed that the MEC himself, Mr. Kwazi Mashangu, joining us, but we are told by his PA that he's in a meeting. So as soon as his meeting is done, he will then join in. So, but let me welcome our 2 guests that I have. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Imraan Keeka, and welcome to Educational Insights here on Salam Media.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah for the opportunity, and greetings and salams to your listeners and viewers.
And good afternoon, Nomarashiya Caluza, and welcome to Mid Morning Talk here on Salam Media.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you and the other guests, and thanks for this opportunity to be hosted by you, and good afternoon to the listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with yourself, Dr. Imraan Keeka. So as the DA spokesperson for education, why has the DA in KZN requested or now calling for the education department faculty of KZN to be placed under administration? I've just highlighted 3 reasons that were reported in terms of teachers' posts not being filled, the PPE scandal, and then racism at schools. What other issues there are, and is KZ education in a crisis currently?
I think when you listen to the input from Nomarashiya, you'll find that on many of these things we agree. But at the time, I had written to the Premier of the province asking him to put the Department of Education and Administration, and this was born out of the SIU report into PPE corruption. Now, this PPE corruption is not and it's not an old matter. You'll recall that we've had interviews on your station and others when we first exposed this matter at the beginning, when we first had our first cases of COVID and procurement began. I had released the prices that were being paid. I visited the SIU and raised the issues very publicly about what I alleged at the time was massive corruption into PPE, and several officials being implicated in the procurement. This was defended at the time by the then HOD, the MEC. The PPE report by the SIU indicated that the MEC even tried his utmost to overturn the processes that they were undergoing. And also, he mentioned this in the House, in the legislature as well, and portfolio committees, that he will have, or he will attempt to have, these things reviewed, the decisions or findings of the SIU reviewed. So fortunately, the SIU stuck to their guns. Now, if you look at that report, you'll see that a large number of the officials of the department, so much so that if action had to be taken against all of them, which should happen, who would it leave in top management? Even the former acting HOD of the department was mentioned by name in this report. The former HOD was mentioned by name in this report, and many others. So, if you have such large scale corruption going on in the department, why would you not place this department under administration so that it can be properly run, the corruption rooted out, and the department put back on track? So, this was the focus of calling for the department to be put under administration. Obviously, the Premier has not responded to my correspondence at all. And then we wrote to the MEC also to ask him what he's doing. And more recently, I sent him parliamentary questions to ask him what has been done in the department in this regard. Of course, to be fair, those questions were sent rather recently. So when he does receive them, would like to see what he's doing, in terms of fighting this corruption crisis that exists in his department. We've called it a cauldron of corruption from the get-go. He's consistently and constantly denied it. And of course, this SIU report places corruption right on top, front and center, and there's no getting away from it. So that was there. With regards to vacancies, yes. Look,
Dr. Imran, I'd like,
Mm.
with regards to the vacancies, can I get SADTU Secretary
Yes,
of
definitely.
KZN to respond, because I know SADTU were very vocal in terms of,
Sure.
in many schools, teachers are overwhelmed with the ratio of teacher to pupil ratio as well,
Correct.
and there are vacancies because many teachers in the past 3 years have retired, or fortunately some have passed on and they were not being replaced. So, Nomarashiya, what was your communication with the Department of Education? The reason why these posts were not filled?
Yes, thanks for the question. And I hope I will also get an opportunity to have a bite on the issue of corruption, or corruption in the department. But to respond directly to the question that was posed, when we deal with the issue of the shortage of teachers in the classroom in KZN schools, this issue, remember that last year, exactly, we had the pickets throughout the province. The main issue came from the national department, in fact, the national government. The time the government was cutting the budget, and the KZN Department of Education had a cut of about 6 billion, and that was going to impact negatively to the programs of the Department of Education. Unfortunately, it was going to affect, including this issue of the appointment of teachers, because it was during the engagement and consultation which the MEC must do before declaring the number of teacher posts in the province. It is then that the MEC indicated that because of budget cuts, so they have to cut, or they have to retrench some of the teachers. Of course, we were concerned about that, and our view was that this thing, as it comes, it was announced by the National Treasury. It's something that must be fought with the government. And on this particular issue, our view was that the provincial government was responsible of protecting the budget of the Department of Education through ensuring that even if there are budget cuts that are imposed by the national government, but the provincial government has a responsibility to protect because of the centrality of the Department of Education, also the non-negotiables that are there of ensuring that there's uninterrupted teaching and learning in each school. And once there is a vacancy of a teacher that is not filled, there is no way that there can't be a claim from ourselves and parents that some learners are not being taught. So that was the reason. But I must say that when we engaged last year with the provincial government, as we had to picket and handed over the memorandum to the provincial premier, we were able to get at least a positive response, even though we know that it may be temporary, because the issue of budget cuts a few weeks ago, we're receiving a budget by the national government through the national treasury. There's no indication that there's any boosting that provincial departments are receiving. But we're able, through the engagement, through the pickets that we had, to ensure that at least last year and this year we've not had anything that speaks to retrenchment. We ensured that those teacher posts were protected and that no retrenchment was going to happen last year. But that it remains a concern because teachers are retiring and teachers are dying like all other people, and there's always expectation that they must be replaced. So it remains a critical issue that must be prioritized, that must be looked at, to ensure that once there's a vacancy of a teacher, that post is filled, so that learners can always have a teacher in front of them. As we have started the year, we are engaging, and there are appointments of teachers that we are seeing, even though our expectation is that on the first day or after the 10th day set in terms of the policy, there must be teachers in full complement in all schools, so that there are no doubts. And that would make sure that even when results are released, we don't compare apples with lemons. We know that the battlefield is leveled in terms of the performance of schools and the investment that is put there in support of the programs in the school. That is why we always say, when the provincial government is doing a budget and when the Department of Education, to be specific, is allocating or distributing its money or the finances, that money must support, most of the time, the bigger percentage must be in support of the classroom activity. And by classroom activity, we mean teaching and learning, because everything else is supposed to be supporting that activity, which is teaching and learning. And for that to happen, parents always bring their learners, and the department, the government must ensure that the kids are always there.
Thank you for the Dr. Imraan. Keeka, you are part of education portfolio. So why is this process in terms of filling vacant posts taking so long? And like the Secretary of KZN, SADTU, has said, everything should focus on quality teaching and learning, and budget should be focused on resources and support systems that are going to facilitate quality in teaching, quality teaching and learning in KZ, and everything else is just support structures and secondary to the primary core. So why is this process taking so long?
I agree so much with Mam Kwabe with regards to the sentiments that she's expressed. Um, the last time we had a portfolio committee meeting was on the 31st of August last year. It's been several months now, before the next meeting that is scheduled in April. And so the last figures that I have from the department with regards to vacancies is there were 6,114 vacancies across schools. They were in the region of 1,300 principals posts that were vacant in the province, around 1,400 or 1,300 to 400 deputy principals, and a similar number of HODs, which form part of senior management of schools. Now, if I may just summarize that, if you want a good, uninterrupted learning and teaching environment, you should have proper leadership. I always call it the triad of good education. It's good leadership, parental involvement, and infrastructure. I'll come to each one as we go along with the discussion. But those are just the numbers of the vacancies. Then we heard from the department at some point that they are filling those vacancies, but all they did was rearrange the deck chairs of the Titanic. So they took people that were already in the system, that were not permanently employed, and permanently employed them, and then said to the public that we have filled so many vacancies. Actually, the people were already in the system. Now, why it's taking so long is that, of course, budgetary constraints, as was mentioned by Nomarashiya, that the budgetary constraints were the problems. And one of the problems with budgetary constraints is that the softest area of cuts is when it comes to what we call the compensation of employees, and that is the filling of these vacancies. So that's the soft area to cut these things. So, as a result of which, you get overcrowded classrooms, increased learner teacher ratios, whole lot of problems that affect the proper running of the school, and certainly interrupts uh, learning and teaching in classrooms. So this is the thing. And it is a pity that the MEC is not here, because we this issue has been constantly raised at the portfolio committee, and this is what they tell us, that look, they tell us by their own admission that it is the softest area to cut, whilst everything else has to do. But of course, you can't just willy-nilly cut everything. You must remember that compensation of employees forms the largest area of the budget expenditure. In KwaZulu Natal, we are the second largest department of any department in the country when it comes to personnel. I think the SNDF is the only department that is bigger than us. And this is where the rub lies, in that we have a whole lot of areas of the compensation of employees that are affected. And unfortunately, for as long as the national and provincial treasuries don't come out to bail the department out in terms of making sure that there's a proper allocation of funding, then we have a problem. And in fact, as the projections go, in terms of what we call the medium term expenditure framework, there is an expected further budget cut in the financial year that is coming up starting on the 1st of April, that is further going to work, it's going to have a knock-on effect on the vacancies in the department. And of course, we will have to determine what's happening. Of course, where there has been attrition from death, disease, retirement, resignations, where staff have been dismissed. We heard recently 13 what we call surplus educators at one school were dismissed. So all of this combined, all of these various reasons combined, continue to impact on vacancy rates within the department.
So yes, it's as you've mentioned. We would have loved everything from the horse's mouth. Unfortunately, the PA says the MEC is still engaged in a meeting, so we will try and at another time engage the MEC and answer both yourself and Nomarashiya's questions in terms of directly. But in terms of your where to from here, how has the DAs asked for the education department to be placed under administration. We will then contact you to see what was the response from the questions that you said you sent, and then the follow-up questions. Nomarashiya, in terms of something else that I would like to discuss with you before I let you go, is the racism at schools. How is SADTU involved in this? This is now across provinces as well, but we've heard that recently as well, the department, the MECA stated that they are going to investigate the recent incident at Point Girls High. But from the union side, how is it managed? And in terms of your educators, offering counsel and also support to learners that are victims of any form of bullying? Do you provide support system and advice to your educators as SADTU members when it comes to addressing the issue of racism at schools?
Okay, so thanks for that. But I really wanted to have a view on this thing of the department being put on administration, which we are not supporting, because we believe that the department still has capacity to have a new HOD. These posts that are being mentioned of principals, deputy principals, there was a process to fill them last year, and they have assumed right now there's a new vacancy list that is open. It will be closing towards the end of the month to show that these posts are being filled. But coming to this one of racism, you see, this one of racism is also linked to this issue of not having teachers in schools. I will raise it quickly to say it is known, the member of parliament that you are hosting here knows that once you are complaining about the shortage of teachers, we also have teachers that are in surplus. The problem that we are facing is that there are schools that do not want to accept these teachers. And we have seen a trend that if the majority of these teachers, of course, who are surplus are coming from deep rural areas of Kwazulu Natal, and those schools were previously disadvantaged. And now teachers coming from these schools, when they are placed to the former model schools, most of the time you'll see the department taken to court because they do not want these teachers. And in that, we are seeing racism because they are always chased away if they are African. That's one. But there's also racism that is manifesting itself in the form of learners being ill-treated, as you have mentioned, the issue of cross-banner school. There are other schools, of course, that start to stand against any form of racism. That is why even when you are raising issues, you must raise the issues across all races, because it's not about a particular race. And we always support teachers, we support learners. It's racism, it's gender-based violence, all these things are there in our schools. And in particular, this one of racism, we support the MEC in as he declared that there will be investigation. In fact, we're saying it would be better if those that are suspected to be racist, that they be put aside so that these learners that have complained are not treated badly because and frustrated as they will be witnesses in the investigation that must take place. Racism is still there in our schools, but there are specific schools that are practicing, that are still deep in racism. And that thing must be rooted out. Everyone must unite as a country, as the people of KZN, to deal with these things in our schools. And we always encourage teachers as well as learners to make sure that whenever it shows its head, it must be rooted out, must be dealt with, and learners must be encouraged to speak out instead of absorbing this thing. Because even our few teachers that are found in some of the schools, even them, they report cases of racism. This racism is not just against learners or perpetrated towards learners, even teachers. When they come or they are placed or they are appointed in some of the schools, they would report that there's racism in that school. It's even said with cross-banner where our learners are called monkeys. It cannot be during 2022. That thing belongs in pre-1994. It belongs to the apartheid, not now. And it must be rooted as a constitution that is so progressive, that protects everyone who lives in South Africa. But we can't believe in those times. All what I'm saying is that as we support, we do provide counseling for teachers, and we always encourage the Department of Education that since they have the wellness program, that they also target these schools where there's racism, especially when there are specific cases that have been reported, so that they go there and support psychosocially in terms of supporting these teachers and learners. But it's still there, and it's our responsibility, all of us, to deal with it and root it out of our schools and society.
Thank you, Nomarashiya. So just to reiterate what you said or alluded to, um, you do not support the DA's call for the education department to be placed under administration. I just want to touch upon that. You, as SADTU, the union, SADTU still believes that the department has the capacity to run the education department in the province. In spite of the SIU report on the corruption in rooting out corruption from the various PPE scandals, what is the SADTU's position regarding the DA's calls for placing the education department under administration?
Firstly, we have seen the SIU report. We note its contents and we view them as very serious. But there are recommendations there in that report which say which suggest that there must be consequence management. And the officials that are mentioned there, they are employees of the Department of Education. In any employer relationship with the employee, there's also a code of discipline, meaning the consequence management which you are supporting must be respected. It must unfold. And the department has been saying it, because we also asked what is going to happen, what is happening. It is that there are disciplinary processes that are taking place. So why jump the gun as if the department has said, no, we don't want to discipline anyone? If there are things that are wrong, people must go and answer. They must go there and answer. And that process can only take not through administration, but it will take through the processes that are there. We are a country that has policies, where a department, there are policies. There is also a code of discipline. There are disciplinary procedures in the department. So we're saying, as a union, those that are mentioned must be taken through that process to put the department under administration. You know, as such, our view is that whenever we deal with issues in education, we must never politicize them. We must never politicize them, and we must be able to see a problem in KZN as we see it in Caluza. A problem, the same problem that we are complaining about here of the shortage of teachers, is the same problem that SADTU in Nyanga, in Caluza, in Cape Town is complaining about, and the approach must be the same. The issue of the SIU report must be treated. There are recommendations. Let's allow the department to deal with those.
Thank you, Nomarashiya. We almost got up with time. I just like Dr. Imraan, Keeka, to respond to SADTU's view, as well as what is the DA's policy with regard to racism in schools as well, in the KZN region particularly.
Thank you very much. So, picking up on the point of Nomarashiya about consequence management, we know all too well that this is just a buzzword. It really doesn't have any effect. It's all just talk, hot air. As far as the disciplinary processes go, what we found is that there's just rearrangement of the deck chairs on the Titanic. This is our experience in this department, that it takes far too long. Some matters of one of their members who assaulted a learner to the point that the learner now has fits and may not have children in the future. That matter dragged on at circuit level for 1 year before we went there to intervene. So, these kinds of consequence management, discipline stories, and all of that, they just drag on. Then, as far as administration goes, administration is a lawful tool that the premier has, that he is empowered with by the Constitution of the Republic, that he can use to correct measures, cause a temporary halt in current processes, and fix things. Now, if he doesn't want to use that, well, then I don't know what he's going to do, because those consequent management and disciplinary things that they keep talking about certainly don't work. As far as the matters between Khayelitsha, Langa, and KZN go, or the Western Cape go, well, one department is corrupt and the other department is not. And that is the difference between the two departments.
Is corrupt.
So yeah, well then come, bring the proof. Let's deal with it. Here we have the SIU report.
Namarasha, must let's
Here
let's focus on
here we
let,
have an SIU report. Here we have here no. Let me
Namarasha,
finish.
Namarasha,
I didn't disturb you. Please let me
Namarasha,
finish my points. Let me finish my points.
Namarasha,
I
let
gave
Mr. Keeka
I
have
gave
an
Mrs.
opportunity to
Yes.
respond. But look, my focus is not here on politicking. It's about
Yes.
equality teaching and learning. So if you can just
You
focus
asked
on the
me.
topic here.
You
Please
you
go
are
ahead, Dr. Imraan Keeka, in your response.
Mrs. Mia, you asked me to respond to it. I'm responding to it.
Thank
And
you.
I did not interrupt Mrs. Caluza at all. She must allow
Noted.
me to finish my points.
Noted.
And if she says there is corruption, they bring it. Let's deal with it. Here we are dealing with an SIU report full of corruption, naming a number of individuals, and we have to deal with it. And if there is no other way to deal with it, then we must. We've even visited schools where they tell us there is corruption, yet nothing happens for years on end, and we can name them and we can shame them. And the problem is that many of these schools are protected by all kinds of mechanisms and means, and these corrupt people are protected and kept in the system rather than them being dealt with through these same consequence management systems that Nomarashiya speaks about, that are never effective. You know, with regards to racism, absolutely spot on. Nomarasha, Madam Caluza was absolutely spot on about the issues of corruption and how they should be dealt with, where they belong, and what should happen in our schools. I can't disagree at all with those sentiments. The reality is this: that the department, unfortunately, in my view, is not properly placed to deal with these things. What should happen is that we have equality courts where these matters must go to, and these racists that are in these schools must be dealt with through the law. Also, when it comes to the investigations, we expect that the South African Human Rights Commission is best placed to investigate these matters, not the department itself. The department, unfortunately, our own experience is this: that when we sit in the legislature where we have the freedom of speech as given to members of the legislature, and through its rules that are given there, we actually see from where we sit on the side of the aisle that we sit compared to the other side, that there are some members that stand up on that august podium and continue to divide the South African population and citizens of our province based on race. And this is unacceptable, and therefore I say that some of the people that go to try and resolve these problems are themselves guilty of standing at the podium and dividing South Africans based on the race. So that is why I say that the best place to deal with these issues in terms of the investigations especially is the South African Human Rights Commission. It is an institution that I have dealt with in my previous term through the oncology crisis, if you will recall, that has a thorough and proper mechanism to deal with all these kinds of issues, very professional, highly educated people that can bring an end to these. And these races must be dealt with on an individual basis. So, no blanket issues here. Let's bring them, let's deal with them, let's charge them. We've seen this happen with other incidents quite publicly, and they must not get away in any way. And that is the only addition that I have to make on the racism issue, that they must not get away in any way. The law must take its course. Thank you very much.
Namarasha, I'm going to give you to close to round off a minute in terms of the way forward. What does SADTU see as the way forward to improve quality teaching and learning? As you've said, that is the core. All other structures are there to support quality teaching and learning in a classroom. So in terms of the KZN issues, what does SADTU see the way forward? And then Dr. Imraan Keeka, in terms of practical way forward. I know Jay has mentioned administration, but what are the other remedies put forward? So you can think about that. I'll give you a minute and a half to respond, and Nomarashiya, you can in closing round off the way forward.
Okay,
Nomarashiya,
thank you.
okay.
No,
Go ahead.
yes. Yes, I'm saying last week on the third we issued a statement welcoming the new HOD, and there are a lot of issues that we raised in that statement also, which may form part of this way forward. To say, for quality teaching, not just education, not just teaching and learning, but quality teaching and learning to happen, I want to repeat, the government, the department must invest more on the classroom activity, support the classroom activity, ensure that there are teachers on time, deployment of teachers on time, filling of vacancies on time, but also ensure that you deal with safety and security in schools, because in the absence of safety and security, there's no way that the classroom activity can flourish. The environment must be conducive. That is why as SADTU, we have this campaign, I Am a School campaign, where we're mobilizing everyone in the community to say people must adopt, people must be friends of their schools so that our schools can be safe havens for teaching and learning to take place, where teachers can freely walk to the school and teach, not fearing for their persons to be taken as it happened in other schools last week, where teachers were attacked in the school, inside while signing the register. All their possessions are taken away. Now think about that teacher going to the class to teach. Will that teacher be productive on that particular day? And the response is no. So we need to have a safe school. We need to ensure that our schools are safe havens. Learners come to school, learn, and without any fear. And that is what must happen. The budget of the department must be prioritizing, ensuring that there's safety, there's security in our schools, that there's learning and teaching material, that there are teachers, and that the program of the school is fully supported in terms of timelessly paying the allocations to the schools, so that schools are not seen wanting or found wanting when it's time for them to run with the program of the academic year. So
Thank you.
we spoke about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nomarashiya. And Dr. Imraan Keeka, you're the way forward. You have 90 seconds.
Jazakallah. So first, we'd like to see audits. So learner-teacher support materials, functionality of school governing bodies, safety in school, audit of school finances, and certainly an audit of infrastructure in schools, so that once you have this proper information in front of you, you can move forward. We'd like to see piloting of cost-saving projects that we've already made suggestions to the department and MEC. These cost-saving measures bring more money into the department or saves the department's money so that it can be put into quality education. We want to see the establishment of a school's evaluations authority to ensure that there is no unnecessary downtime in classrooms. We want to see the entrance of public-private partnerships in schools through collaboration schools to improve quality education, particularly by piloting certain districts in the province. We want to see the use of alternate building methods so that more classrooms can be provided at lower costs. We want to see that educators are vetted against the sexual offenders register, because we are seeing an increased number of sexual offenses in schools, and this process has not occurred at all. And lastly, amongst many points, but given 90 seconds, is to see the improvement in learner transport, especially around special needs learners that are drastically and significantly affected by learner transport. In as much as transport is already provided to learners, there are also a large number of learners in the province that are not, I think there's around 70,000 learners that still need transport in our province, on top of those that are already being transported. And that is certainly something that we'd like to see. So I hope I've used my 90 seconds in highlighting the wish list of what we would like to see. Not having, just going back to the point of mentioning that consequence management, or the buzzword, it mustn't just be a buzzword, it must be a reality.
Thank you so much. That was Dr. Imraan Keeka, and he's a spokesperson for the DA on education, as well as he's a member of the provincial legislature. as well as part of the education portfolio committee. And then I had Ms. Nomarashiya Caluza, and she is the SADTU KZN secretary. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we are going to send a recording and a podcast of this debate to the office of the MEC, and hopefully he will be able to have a listen in, and the department moves forward in the direction of both sterling advices from both yourself, Dr. Keeka, as well as Ms. Namarashiya, and the MEC takes heed, and we'd like to see in the next year that the quality of teaching and learning will improve significantly in KZN. Thank you for joining us, and we thank you for the privilege and the honor of your time for being here on Salam Media, your online humanitarian platform. Peace and blessings to you both.
Jazakallah
Thank
for the
you. And thank
opportunity, and
you.
assalamu alaikum. And
Wa alaikum
greetings to
salam.
Mam Caluza.
Thank you.
And Nomarashiya, thank you for your time as well.
Thank you
We-
again for hosting us. I thank you to Dr. Keeka.
It's a pleasure. And that was your panel discussion for the month here on Educational Insights. And I thank you for the privilege and the company of being here in our studios, in our home here in Robertsham, and looking forward to next week's mid-morning talk here. As always, we will bring you education council advice, provide a platform for our brave volunteers who give off their time and their resources in serving humanity, and all the advocates as well as advocacy groups that provide a platform for the marginalized and give a voice and amplify the voices for those that are finding themselves in difficult circumstances. And also, as we've seen, the community circle of Home SA assisting all over the world to help repatriate South Africans to bring them home wherever they may be. So I'm always in awe at admiration for those individuals that give off, in spite of their own personal work, job, family commitments, yet they make the time. So it's not even find the time, because I have many people say, but how do you find the time? I just doing my job, running a home, overseeing the family, managing my own personal circumstances in my own home community. I just don't have time for any other thing. But these individuals find the time, or they don't even find the time. They make sure that they volunteer work and their service to humanity is part of who they are and part of what they do. So they make the time, and it's included in every other commitment that they have. And that's what my appeal to everybody. Find some time, even if it means 15 minutes of your day, that you could do something or facilitate something, or use your expertise, your resources to assist one of these many NPOs, NGOs, PBOs in the work that they could do, because your time, your expertise, or your resources could be the difference and make the difference. So here at Salam Media, your online humanitarian platform, that is what we appeal. We are here to provide that platform, and we ask everybody, make that time, to serve humanity. And for me, it's a pay forward, because I always believe if you serve the creation of Almighty will open avenues so that your own work in your own time becomes really easy. That work gets facilitated through divine facilitation. So for me, yes, your small input you do in service of humanity, in service of your community, you then get. And I truly believe, I've seen it. So I don't believe this, I've witnessed this. I think I'm a product of divine facilitation in many other challenges. For me, the it just pays it way forward. So I leave you with that thought that it's never too late. So please, always lend a helping hand. Caring is sharing. And with this, may you be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty. Until we meet next week, it's peace and blessings to you all. Wassalamu alaikum